All right, college game day, as you can tell, was a lot of fun. Week 8. This was the message. Started off by saying this. One of the most popular songs on the charts this year has been the song called Cool Kids, and all your kids knew it. The famous line is, "I wish that I could be like the cool kids." I looked up why they would write that song, what was the story behind it, because if you want to know what our culture values the most at the time, you can just look at what songs are getting the most plays. It's really interesting. And they said that the reason they wrote that is because they really related to wanting to be one of the cool kids, wanting to fit in, wanting to look good, and just longing for something that they didn't have. And they feel like every single person in our country can relate to that to some degree. So I just wanted to ask, where does that come from? In 2 Kings 5, the story of Naaman, I think, gives us a little hint on where that comes from, that desire, and what the solution is. So in that story, it's really simple. Naaman is popular. He's rich. He's one of the cool kids, but he also has a major problem. And that shows us, first of all, that popularity and getting what we want doesn't necessarily take away all of our problems. In fact, Jim Carrey, in a famous quote a few years ago, said, "I wish everyone could be famous and rich so they could see it doesn't answer any problems." And Naaman learned that. It didn't take away his problems. His problem was leprosy, a big skin disease that he couldn't clean or heal on his own. So he learned that there was a prophet of God that might be able to help him. So he takes all of his money, a bunch of silver and gold, and his goal is to buy his healing from the prophet. So he goes up, he's like, "I got this, I'm going to pay for it." And the prophet says, "No, you're not going to pay. There's only one way you can be healed, and it's to humble yourself and to go, take this as a free gift, and wash yourself in the dirty Jordan River 7 times. Naaman hates it, gets really angry, doesn't want to humble himself, and says, "No, I'm out. I'm not doing that. First of all, I want to pay for it. I want to earn it. Second of all, why can't it be a nice river? Why can't it be something that's really nice and prestigious? Why does it have to be that river?" So he leaves. He's going to miss out on the blessing because he won't humble himself. Well, some of his friends come around him and talk him into it and say, no. You need to humble yourself. This is the only way you can be cleansed and healed." So because of the people around him that loved him enough to tell him the truth, he humbled himself, and eventually he went and did it and was cleaned instantly and healed of his leprosy. And the lesson that Naaman learned is that sometimes our problems expose our pride, and only when we can see our own pride and see our need will we cry out for grace and really get to experience that blessing. So what does that have to do with us today? This is what I said. When I was interviewed at a church a few years ago, they asked, "What do you think is the one value you would want to see developed in people in the church?" And I said, it's from Matthew 5:3. It's Jesus' first line on the Sermon on the Mount. "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." In other words, blessed are those who know how much they need a Savior, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And I feel like being poor in spirit is the hardest quality for a lot of us to have because of our pride. Jonathan Edwards, I read this article the other day on 7 symptoms that you struggle with pride. He wrote this years ago, and I'll send it to you if you email info@armourupdallas.com. And I read it, realized I failed all 7 of them. I struggle with pride in ways I didn't even know about. And when I look to the cross, though, I don't see Jesus with pride. I see somebody that humbled himself, became a servant that died a death for me. And when I pay attention to his humility in the midst of my pride, it begins to take away my pride. I begin to feel more humble when I fix my eyes on his humility. When I realize that we're so bad he had to die for us, but we're so loved that he wanted to. So what does that have to do with the whole thing of the cool kids? I think that problem, that desire to justify ourselves and prove ourselves, comes from the fact that we do not believe that in front of Christ, because of him, we are golden before God. So that's why we try to create this image in front of other people. But if we fix our eyes on what he says about us in the gospel, that we're loved, redeemed, and righteous, and totally accepted because of his work, then I don't worry about my image anymore. I don't worry about trying to fit in with the cool kids or proving myself or justifying myself, because he already justified us, and that can never be taken away. So the great thing, and I told you kids this at the end, that Christianity isn't just believing a certain set of things in your mind and agreeing with it. It actually gives you new sight. You start seeing life differently. Because you're free by the gospel, you start caring about other things. And that's the amazing news of what we have.